The story of the reintroduction of wolves at Yellowstone National Park is a famous one. It received widespread media attention, and a video about it on YouTube called How Wolves Change Rivers went viral and received over 42 million views. The intervention at Yellowstone is often cited by advocates of rewilding as a major success story and something to be replicated. And the media response to the intervention at Yellowstone has been an overwhelmingly positive one. But is there another side to this story? Is the intervention at Yellowstone the incredible success story it's made out to be? And is the world actually a better place as a result of this intervention? Right now, you might think that the reintroduction of wolves at Yellowstone is a major success and is indeed something that should be replicated. And if that's what you think, well, I appreciate you being here and being willing to hear a different perspective. And I hope you won't enter the fiery depths of the comment section until you've heard all I have to say. Although this isn't my main issue with the How Wolves Change Rivers video, it should be mentioned that it isn't factually accurate. Tom Hobbs, an ecology professor from Colorado State University, said the following: "It's a lovely story, and I would love this to be true, but it isn't. The video is demonstratively false." What the video fails to mention is that willow and aspen is not the primary food source for elk, who are in fact grazers. 90% of what the elk eat is grass. While the video strongly suggests that wolves were somehow responsible for the growth of willow, Hobbs cited changes in precipitation, stream flow, floodplain, and water tables as major contributing factors to the growth of the willow. Now, Hobbs isn't the only academic to suggest that the Yellowstone video is a gross oversimplification. Utah State University ecologist Dan McNulty said, "It's a really romantic story. It's a story about a world that doesn't exist." McNulty criticised the popular Yellowstone narrative, stating that it doesn't take into account the complexity of the Yellowstone food web. As well as wolves, the park is also home to bears, coyotes, and mountain lions who all kill and eat elk calves. McNulty states that the wolves play only a small part in the reduction of the elk population. The most important impact on the elk population may be attributed to humans, not wolves, according to McNulty. This is because as the elk migrate from the protected lands of the national park, they enter other areas of Montana where they're open for legal hunting. I think that many people have the idea that an ecosystem has a certain balance, and that when this balance is offset, the ecosystem is destroyed and needs to be restored. This belief has some truth to it, but in many ways it's rigid and simplistic. Nature is a place of continuous change, and with or without human intervention, populations of different species fluctuate. Now, a classic pattern is one where there are a lot of predators, leading to a reduction in the number of prey animals because so many of them are eaten, which then makes it so that many predators starve to death and the population of the predators go back down, which then makes it so the prey animal population increases, and so the cycle continues. For every ecosystem, there are many possible balances, and which balance you prefer among the ones that are possible depends on your values. If your value is that everything should be as it was, then almost by definition, the best ecosystem is the one that is most similar to the way it used to be. Though one might ask, how far back should we look? Who knows, perhaps the most hardcore conservationists think the Ediacaran period was correct and that everything since has been an abomination. The belief that the best outcome for an ecosystem is that it stays as it was is so common that many people don't even consider that there could be other perspectives. But there is another perspective, and that's one I'll argue for here. Because from my perspective, the important question isn't which balance is most similar to how it used to be, but rather which balance is best for the animals that live there. This perspective isn't considered at all in the How Wolves Change Rivers video. Never once does it ask, if I was to be born into the ecosystem myself as a randomly chosen animal, what would I prefer then? One of the things the video says is the following:
"But as soon as the wolves arrived, even though they were few in number, they started to have the most remarkable effects. First, of course, they killed some of the deer, but that wasn't the major thing. Much more significantly, they radically changed the behavior of the deer. The deer started avoiding certain parts of the park, the places where they could be trapped most easily, particularly the valleys and the gorges."
With the way the narrator speaks and the way this is filmed and with the background music, it's made to seem like this is a beautiful thing. But what we're supposed to find beautiful is that the deer are afraid of being eaten alive. So afraid that they sometimes choose to eat less rather than taking the increased risk of being torn to shreds. This concept is sometimes called ecology of fear. Research suggests that rats who are exposed to predators can sometimes get symptoms that are reminiscent of PTSD. And that's understandable. If I saw my friend being eaten by an animal that was many times my own size, or if I was almost eaten myself, then I would be stressed too. And of course, it's not always fun being a predator either. For example, since the introduction of wolves at Yellowstone, there have been several outbreaks of canine distemper disease, causing many individuals to suffer and die. Canine distemper is a viral disease that causes severe pneumonia, bloody diarrhea, and death.
The birds started moving in. The number of songbirds, of migratory birds, started to increase greatly. The number of beavers started to increase because beavers like to eat the trees. And the dams they built in the rivers provided habitats for otters and muskrats and ducks and fish and reptiles and amphibians. The wolves killed coyotes, and as a result of that, the number of rabbits and mice began to rise, which meant more hawks, more weasels, more foxes, more badgers.
Now the video presents this as almost self-evidently good, and it may appear that way to you as well. But let's think about this for a minute. First, consider that while it makes sense to speak about something being good or bad for an individual animal, it's less obvious what we mean when we say that something is good for a species. After all, there is nothing that it is like to be a species. A species is an abstraction. It's a way we categorize individual animals. If what's good for a species is that they are great in number, then factory farmed chickens are doing fantastic. But that's the wrong perspective. Our primary goal should be that the individual animals who are born have good lives. Ecosystems are complicated, but as a rule of thumb, we might expect that as populations of large plant eaters, like deer and elk, reduce, like they did in Yellowstone, populations of smaller animals, like mice and insects, increase. At the same time, we might expect these smaller animals to have a lower quality of life on average. This is because smaller animals tend to have more children, and most of these animals die very young. These animals that are born and then die shortly after from disease, starvation, or from being eaten, they didn't choose to be born. And much like factory farmed chickens, they don't suffer from non-existence. If you had the choice between being born into a life where you die painfully shortly after birth, or not being born at all, what would you choose? Whenever someone promotes empathy towards wild animals, many people will espouse how hopeless and naive they think it is to try to improve nature. You have a God complex. You don't understand how complex ecosystems are. But imagine, for example, if doctors had that same fatalistic attitude towards human suffering. Imagine them saying that since the human body is so incredibly complicated and interconnected, there was no point in even trying to develop medicines or treatments, since surely that would only make things worse. Thinking about a problem for 5 seconds and then concluding that for sure we can't ever do anything about it, that might feel like wisdom, but it isn't. Look, ensuring that all wild animals live without suffering is not something we'll be able to do anytime soon. But we do have a choice between trying to make things better and not even caring if we make things worse. And we have different ways of doing population control. The most humane way is perhaps contraception. Contraception for wild animals may sound to many of you like a ridiculous idea, but actually it has already been implemented successfully in the past. Meanwhile, one of the cruelest and unfortunately most romanticized and thus most prevalent methods of population control is the introduction of predators. Now, there are videos that I won't show here and that also aren't shown on wildlife documentaries since they're too graphic. They show screaming young animals having big fleshy bites taken from their legs and their stomachs. Animals that have guts pouring out from big holes in their bodies. Animals so ripped apart and destroyed that you wonder, how are they still alive, yet still wide awake and agonized? When we hear that the ancient Romans, as a form of punishment, had people eaten alive by wild animals, of course we think that's barbaric. And we think that because it's a terrible way to die. Often comparable to extreme forms of middle-aged torture. The lucky ones may die within a few minutes, but not everyone is that lucky. Wild animal suffering is a moral blind spot that should be addressed in the animal advocacy movement. It saddens me that many of my fellow vegans are staunchly against humans hunting deer and yet promote rewilding as an alternative. Yes, being shot is terrible, but being eaten alive is far worse. And when many animal activists are advocating for doing something that causes more animal suffering than what the hunters advocate for, well, you know something has gone terribly wrong. The intervention at Yellowstone wasn't done for the wolves, or for the deer, or for any of the animals that live there. If we did it for them, we would be trying to figure out whether it made their lives better or worse. But if we didn't do it for them, then why did we do it? Well, humans like it when ecosystems are more exciting. Ken Sine, whose company offers tours around Yellowstone National Park, cites the fact that the wolves hunt in the open where people can see it as one of the reasons for why wolf ecotourism is so popular. And many humans have romantic notions of preserving ecosystems the way they were. When seeing things from this perspective, we often view animals as numbers, as cogs in a machine that is the ecosystem. And we forget that their experiences, their feelings, their desires are just as real as ours. Meanwhile, the vast majority of the world's conscious beings are wild animals. And I can promise you, their perspective isn't how can we ensure that this ecosystem stays like it was in the past? Rather, they're concerned with questions such as how can I get food? And how can I look after my children? And how can I avoid suffering? A very common fallacy is the assumption that natural equals good and unnatural equals bad. But is it good if you get cancer just because cancer is natural? Are earthquakes good? Should you be outside in the snow in the winter rather than in your cozy apartment, since that's how nature designed it? Should we not use anesthesia when we operate on people? Should we not be doing medicine at all? It's natural for almost half of all humans to die before the age of 15. But we shouldn't ask what's natural. We should ask what's good. The belief that nature knows best for wild animals is mistaken. Nature is indifferent to suffering. Evolutionary processes optimize for the replication of genes, not the well-being of individuals. So let's not assume that the way things happen to be in nature is optimal for the well-being of the individuals living within it. It wasn't for us, and it isn't for them. Rather than focusing on restoring nature to its previous or natural state, let's focus on creating a better world for everyone. After all, that's what we want for the future of humanity. And at the very least, let's not do interventions that create a world with more suffering. Let's extend our circle of compassion to include all sentient beings, regardless of whether they're human or non-human, and regardless of whether they're wild or domesticated. Let's place our focus on the well-being of individuals. After all, their experiences are what matters to them, so that's what should matter to us.
One of the most exciting scientific findings in the last half-century has been the discovery of widespread trophic cascades. And the classic example is what happened in London when wolves were reintroduced. Now we all know that wolves kill humans by eating them alive, but perhaps we are less aware that they give life to many others. Due to the advent of modern medicine and the lack of predators, the number of humans in London had built up and built up. And despite methods to control population size with contraception, they managed to grow and grow to the point where forests were being cut down in order to make space. As soon as the wolves arrived, though small in number, they started to have the most remarkable effects. First, of course, they killed some of the humans, but that wasn't the major thing. Much more significantly, they radically changed the behavior of the humans. The humans started avoiding certain parts of London, particularly the places where they could be tracked most easily. These places were then given the opportunity to regenerate. In some parts of London, the trees actually grew taller. Wow! Blocks of offices quickly became forests of aspen and willow and cottonwood. Yes, more trees.
and as soon as that happened, the birds started moving in. The wolves attacked the foxes, and as a result of that, the number of rabbits and mice increased, which meant more hawks who would catch and eat the mice alive. Bears also came into London, who reinforced the impact of the wolves by killing some of the young humans who hadn't yet developed the ability to run, and whose blood gave nutrients to the soil. But here's where it starts getting really interesting. By driving the humans out of some places and the vegetation recovering in the city, there was less soil erosion because the vegetation stabilized that as well. So the wolves, small in number, transformed the entire ecosystem of London, increasing biodiversity and improving soil quality, even changing the trajectory of rivers. Beautiful.
If you enjoyed this video, then please do hit the subscribe button. If you're interested in what we can do to reduce wild animal suffering, then click on the video that I should put about here, called How to Solve Wild Animal Suffering. As always, thanks a lot to my patrons who are making these videos possible. And November's Patron of the Month award goes to Chris Verdegal. And you have won my copy of In Defense of Animals by Peter Singer. Thank you for everything, Chris, and I hope you enjoy this. And if you're someone who's not currently a patron of mine, but you find my content valuable, then please do consider supporting me. It really does make a difference. And with that said, I will see you very soon with another video. Thanks for watching.